Bonjour, welcome to our presentation about possession. That doesn't mean a ghost is taking you over, but rather not. An ability to note that something is owned by someone else. And in English, we can say things like my, your, his, hers, its, our, and your, and their, as well as do this amazing thing where we just put an apostrophe and then an S after somebody's name. It says it belongs to them. We can also use full sentences saying it belongs to someone, or that someone has something. However, in French, we don't have all of these exact options. And let's take a look at the options that we do have to note possession. We can say that someone has something. Notice this is a full sentence. We're using the verb avoir, to have. We can also say this is to someone. We're using the verb être, of to be, is to someone, thus belong to someone. We can also use something that might be a little difficult for us to process as Americans, the thing of or from of someone as belonging to them. We do have possessive adjectives in English, for example, mon mame, which we talked about the other day, and we also have something called, in French, something called possessive pronouns, which we won't exactly learn until French 201, but I want to cover them here just in case you are curious. So again, pronouns would replace the noun. So notice how they all have le or la in front of them because they're replacing a noun saying, well, that's mine, that's yours. Le sien, le notre, le vôtre, le leur. Again, these will be tested in French 201. So this is just a preview of what we would be tested on. Now, things that you're going to have to recognize right now is that possessive adjectives, the mon mame, those we will be tested on. Things that you will see is that it does belong or someone has something. This is to someone and the thing of so-and-so. So be prepared to see those and be prepared to be able to use possessive adjectives. Notice, nowhere on this list is that a lovely apostrophe S that makes things easy, and I continue to see this in writing, whether or not I explain this rule. So please, 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 stop using apostrophe S in French. It doesn't exist. So we're going to go through each of these examples one by one so that it becomes pretty familiar with you. You are familiar with it. So someone has something. Again, we have to use this lovely verb avoir in order to complete that full sentence. Let's use Bob's Burgers as an example. Someone has something. Bob's Burgers. Again, we can't use apostrophe S, so we have to say Bob has some hamburgers. Bob a des hamburgers. Now, if I need to say this is my hamburger, I am going to have to change that if I'm Bob. I'm going to have to conjugate the verb avoir and say j'ai des hamburgers. So that's pretty easy, right? It makes sense. It's something that we would say in English. But we're going to take a look at something that may not be as easy. Because we don't really say, well, it's to someone for it belongs to someone. So that can be a little confusing. For example, if I want to say, whose is this? Well, it's to somebody else. It belongs to them. Whose hamburgers are these? Well, ce sont à Bob. They are Bob's. And I have to say this c'est à and ce sont à is very commonly used. I mean, look at these lovely little kids' books saying, à moi, c'est à moi, à moi, à moi. Even the birds in Finding Nemo, à moi, à moi, à moi. Very, very common, especially with kids. Best and easiest way to note possession. That structure, again, is really easy. You use the verb être, c'est à, ce sont à, and then either a disjoint pronoun or a name, and boom, you have a full sentence that denotes possession. If you can make it longer or shorter by actually including the object that is or belongs to someone else. Les stylos sont à madame. Le stylo est à madame. You can make this even shorter by just saying, it's to someone. It's theirs. À moi, c'est à moi. À toi, à lui, à elle, à nous, à vous, à eux, à elle, à Bob. Again, this is not a full sentence, but it is a very fast way of saying, well, it's his, it's hers, it's theirs. Now we're going to step even further into more discomfort zone and say, well, this is the thing of so-and-so. Again, this doesn't have a verb in it. It's just the thing of so-and-so. You can say, well, it is the thing of so-and-so, which is totally acceptable. But let's do that same example of Bob's Burgers. So we can use this phrase, les hamburgers de Bob, for Bob's Burgers. Okay, notice no verb. Let's find some other lovely and nerdy examples that will help you make that change and that shift in your brain that something can be of someone, meaning theirs. So, l'agneau de Sauron, la cicatrice de Harry, l'ordinateur de Steve Jobs, la pomme de Steve. Hopefully that will help sink in. Again, these we will see. This of somebody, this somebody has something, or this is to somebody. But the thing that we will be tested on and we will have to spell out and understand correctly are those wonderful possessive adjectives that can really trip us up. When we first cover this, it seems pretty easy because we first just talk about mon, ma, and me. And we talk about family. And we talk about, oh, ma mère. And we understand that she's always going to be a female. Well, for most people, she's always going to be a female. So we're going to say ma mère. Every once in a while, I'll hear mon père, and I will giggle and say, well, did she have surgery? Similarly with mon père, every once in a while, I'll see ma père and be like, is he no longer a mâle? But the using possessive adjectives gets more and more difficult when we're talking about things that don't exactly have a gender in our minds. Because we are English speakers, we don't understand that the pen is masculine. We haven't memorized that it's been masculine. And we have to sometimes make these lovely pictures for ourselves, putting funny eyelashes on Post-its and mustaches on others to remember, oh, chair is always female. Why is my desk male? Oh, cards. Well, those are female, just like maps, but notebooks have to be masculine? Why is my computer masculine? I was able to find one funny source at FrenchTogether.com because learning the gender of objects can be difficult. And yes, sometimes that strategy of putting mustaches and eyelashes on things can help. But we have to know whether these objects are masculine or feminine in order to choose the correct possessive adjective. Well, this website, FrenchTogether.com, says that with 90% accuracy, you can guess whether an object is masculine or feminine just by the ending that is listed on it. And I have kind of heard this a little bit, but to be honest, I've really only heard that these were most always masculine. This E, A, U, and O sounds were normally masculine except for water and skin. So I'm not exactly sure about the others. I have not tried or tested this theory of theirs. They have also said that typically with 90% accuracy, you can guess that something that is feminine based off of all these endings. And again, I've really only heard this one. The ION is feminine, the E is feminine, and the IVE is feminine. They also summarized and said, well, if you don't need 90% accuracy, you just want for the majority of the time, that the majority of words that end in E or ION are feminine, except words that end in AGE, EGE, E accent, and isma. These often indicate masculine words. And that most masculine noun endings are all of the others. Well, let's put this to the test for that short list of nouns that we have already covered in class. We have these. These are all feminine. They all end in E. Okay, well, that worked. Well, these are all masculine. We have two that end in E, and they don't follow that one rule. So it might be easier to remember that most everything ends in an E, and then only have to remember the ones that don't follow this rule. Either way, hopefully some of that information will be helpful to you to choosing this, because we have to remember that ordinateur is always masculine, and we have to remember that pomme is always feminine. It is sa pomme, not because Steve Jobs is a female, but because Apple is a female. An ordinateur, even though it is masculine, it will always have son because this starts with a vowel sound. You know, French people would not have sa ordinateur. They would say son ordinateur. Let's look at a few examples on what this means for when we're reading. When we see sa carte, we can't tell if it's his map, her map, or its map. Similarly, when we see sa plume or son stylo, if we have three people here, we don't know who exactly we're talking about, if they are masculine or feminine. We only know that that object, the plume, is feminine, and the stylo is masculine. And it's one of the three. Same thing with sa chaise. Well, whose chair are we talking about? even if we are talking about the captain's chair, Picard's chair, it is sa chaise because the chair itself is always feminine. If we're talking about Ariana's book, it's just son livre because livre is masculine. And even though épée itself is feminine, we're going to use son épée because it starts with a vowel sound, and we don't want sa épée, which is 2 vowel sounds in a row. And you're probably thinking at this point, this is very, very confusing, having to remember that classe is feminine, course is masculine, and devoir is plural, but luckily for you, notre, votre, and leur are going to, in the singular forms, be exactly the same. For example, notre classe, notre cours, masculine, feminine doesn't matter, only plural does. Similarly for votre. So at that point, that's pretty easy. Oh, and leur, except for this should say L-E-U-R-S, devoir. And this was too cute. I had a nightmare. All the people forgot to open their blackboard today. Please don't do that. Well, let's summarize. So again, we can use possessive, or we can state possession by saying someone has something, it is to someone, the thing of someone, or my, your, his, hers, its. Now that you understand this, go clean your rooms. And you're saying, wow, this is a crazy story. Your story, this story of you, your story doesn't make any sense. If you can, try to think again on a test that on this chart, which you might have to write on it at the very beginning, you're going to have to think, okay, first of all, who owns it? To figure out which of these columns you're going to choose, or rows you're going to choose, and then figure out what is that object itself. And it will be easier for your family when we're describing family because your mom is always going to be a female and your father is always going to be a male. This does still require some mental gymnastics. But again, if you can memorize this graphic organizer and then perhaps write it on the top of your test before you even start taking it, it might prove useful for you. Now, if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to email or add a comment, and we will work to solve those problems. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video of possession, and bon weekend.